Informed Choice Radio, episode 482, with John Soforic, author of The Wealthy Gardener.
Live from Sundial House Studios, this is Informed Choice Radio. Want to make the most of your money and your life? You've come to the right place. Now, here's your host, Martin Bamford.
What are the most important prosperity life lessons we should pass on to the next generation? My guest today has experienced hardship, faced challenges, and found the necessary mindset required to achieve financial freedom. John Soforic is a real estate investor from Mount Pleasant in Pennsylvania. He's author of The Wealthy Gardener, a heartwarming series of stories and practical wisdom on entrepreneurship and wealth. John wrote The Wealthy Gardener for his son as a way to share his prosperity life lessons. The parable of the wealthy gardener is far more than an admonishment to earn more or spend less. It's about timeless principles. As his lessons reveal, financial freedom is a means to power and control over our lives. Without money, we're subject to the demands and whims of others. With money, we're sheltered from the storm, and we can extend that shelter to our loved ones. Poised to become an intimate financial classic, The Wealthy Gardener inspires readers to find their own noble purpose and relieve their money worries once and for all. So here's my conversation with John Soforic, author of The Wealthy Gardener, in episode 482 of Informed Choice Radio. Welcome back to Informed Choice Radio. John, perhaps you could start by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and about your background and what it is you do.
Absolutely. I live in a small town in the middle class of America. Went to a Catholic grade school and a Catholic high school. And when I graduated, I was indoctrinated with some beliefs about the excesses of money, the evils of wealth. And so I was told things like, what good is it to gain the world and yet lose your very soul? And a rich man can't get into heaven any more than a camel can fit through the eye of a needle. The love of money is the root of all evil. And blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall inherit the land. Things like this. And I was indoctrinated into a way that I have to say that I had to break patterns from. I had to take over my mind and recondition myself and also control my behaviors and have a whole new psychology to break the pattern of my past. And even when I was rising, I chose a goal of financial freedom for myself and my family. I still had to fight middle-class beliefs in America. And I was always being told things like, money won't make you happy, or, there's more important things in life than money. You realize you got to live for the day. You work too hard and you can't take it with you. You really want to be the richest man in the cemetery? Mm. And so it was important for me. I had to recondition myself, and I struggled with this throughout life. And I think it's something that we all do if we're born into a certain class that's not privileged. That was my past. And so I had to rise above my raising and break my patterns. And, it became apparent to me that I was a prisoner of my environment unless I set out to choose my own beliefs. We don't rise to the level of our dreams. I think we fall to the level of our beliefs and our expectations in life. We don't get what we want, we get what we tolerate. And so it's really important for us to choose. We do have the power to choose and be unlike everybody around us. So if you ask about my past, that's probably where we start. I had to break the patterns of my past in order to become financially independent.
And you wrote a new story for yourself, effectively, at some point. When was the tipping point for you? When did you realize you had to break those childhood shackles to set yourself free and to write that new story?
That's a great question. It's, for me, the tipping point was without a doubt my 20s. I would say it was a long haul through the 20s. That was a decade for me that I saw a lot of scarcity. I saw a lot of financial struggle. I graduated from a college. I graduated from chiropractic college. I had $100,000 worth of debt back in 1990. That's the equivalent of $200,000 in debt right now. And so all of a sudden, I jumped into life with a splash. And so I started my own clinic in Chicago. It took me a while to get that moving. I finally sold that a year later. I moved across the country. I started another clinic. That same decade, I got married and had 2 children. So it was a decade of chaos and financial pain and struggle. And I think if you ever go through that kind of a period in your life where you don't know how to buy a pizza, you have a family and you don't know how you're going to pay for groceries and you kind of live in fear, I promise you that changes you. And all of a sudden, the importance of money became vividly clear for me in my 20s. And I saw that my operating system of my mind needed to be changed in order for my behaviors to be changed. And it just became very important for me to not live like this all my life. I had to overcome the money situation of life.
So you went from being educated that money was the root of all evil to living that money was about scarcity and was about fear and struggle. So what was the catalyst for you that changed all of that around? What triggered that change in belief? Because it was ingrained in you by that point.
Absolutely. To answer that question, the only way I know to change your beliefs is to repetitiously repeat statements of affirmation. I do that. I did that. I would say stuff to myself like, wealth is my way to impact the world. The world needs good people with money. The more money I have, the more people I can help. I become wealthy through service to others. So I deliberately set out to change my beliefs through forced repetition, no doubt about it, and not just words. You try to drive that into your brain. It's just words unless you put emotion into it. And so I had to convince myself this was real. It's like you can convince yourself of any lie if you repeat it to yourself over and over and over. And I deliberately set out to do that. I have a choice. We have a choice to change what we believe, what we think, but we can't do that without conscious effort. So I deliberately did it. And in fact, I'll tell you another thing that helped in later years. I would make a recording on my cell phone and I would say those kind of statements and put it in my ears. And I would listen to it as I would exercise. I had to reprogram myself deliberately to overcome the programming that was undeliberate in my first 20 years. So for me, that was the intelligent way to do it. I deliberately set out to change my thinking and to change my behaviors and to overcome probably a scarcity mindset and change it over to more of a wealth mindset.
So with your mindset, with your beliefs changed for the better, how did you put that into action? What steps did you take to get onto the road to financial freedom?
Once you get your mindset correct, and what I call a wealth mindset, let's define that. A wealth mindset to me is absolute faith, pure certainty, no matter what is around you. And that's the challenge of life. You're stuck in a situation and you see all around you scarcity, but you have to believe. That's your job. It's like walking onto an athletic competition where you cannot walk onto that stage with doubt and worry and fear. You have to have belief. Okay, so I think of my 20s, and I'm getting around to answering your question, but this is important first. I always saw a quote by Winston Churchill. He said that success is going from failure to failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. And to my credit, it didn't break my spirit in my 20s, and it should have, right? Now, you're asking the question, of course, what do you do? Mindset's not everything. It's the starting point. It's a big starting point. In my 30s, let's say I get to the age of 30, and so with a whole new idea of money, with a new mindset, I set a goal, and I set a pretty outrageous goal. My goal, because I didn't want to have to deal with the money problem anymore, my goal was a passive income by the age of 50 of $220,000. I wanted to get so far away from the line of a money problem that I never had to think about money. And so that was the very first thing I did. I cleared my mind that the 30s were a decade of progress, and progress started with focus for me. After I got the focus of a goal, and I didn't just make that goal and leave it, I stayed with it every day. Just like the programming of my mind, I would review that goal every day. Just like we know we're supposed to, but we usually don't do. I actually did that. And because I did that, then my behaviors fell into line and my strategies fell into line to achieve that goal. What do the 30s look like? I would still go to a clinic every day, 40 hours a week. But then I started to look at the 70 free hours we have every week. Everybody has this vast amount of free hours in their life. And the question is, what do we do there? That's the optional time. So I started using 20 hours a week and going into another business outside of my 40-hour job. That business was rental real estate. It was a pretty simple strategy for me. I would go out and I would buy a property, hopefully a mispriced, discounted property. That's what I was looking for. I would bring a team of contractors in. They would then fix it up. We would get it fixed up. I would come in and refinance from the bank. The bank would give me my money back. And then the tenants would come in and pay the bank loan. And it wasn't rocket science, but it was a consistent base hit, one after the other after the other. I moved into my free time, and that's what I did. I would go after one rental, followed by one rental, followed by one rental. And I always had a saying in my 30s that base hits win games. And that was probably my strategy. My kids heard that a lot of times. I was just a base hit. I had a really good average, but I had 0 home runs. But I won the game and I got progress. And I'll tell you another strategy of the rich that I really found out through my 30s. It wasn't just me working for my goals anymore. I found a way to leverage the hours of other people. And so through real estate, now I start out small. You know, when I made the goal, I'm the guy who can't order a pizza. By the end of my 30s, I have probably 15, 12 contractors on my payroll, depending on how many projects we have going. So now it's not just me out there pushing a ball up a hill. Eventually, house after house, rental after rental, it gets bigger and the snowball grows. And so even though you start with nothing, you can gain the power of other people if you keep doing things right. And really, that's the lesson of my 30s. It was progress through leveraging other people, 20 hours a week outside of my workday.
With the ultimate goal in mind of generating sufficient passive income where the workday no longer exists or no longer has to exist.
Without a doubt, that's what financial freedom to me means, right? What do you like? Everybody has their own definition of wealth, and that's always an interesting question. And you know, for me, I've always considered wealth the ability to live without a job. And I'm not against work. I do value work. It's not like you want to sit on a beach and do nothing. I think we express our fullest potential through hard work and doing things that we choose. But I can tell you that I felt like my potential wasn't being used when it was just chasing $1. I really wanted to get that out of my life so that I can concentrate on more important things. To get to that, that's an interesting conversation if you want to talk about that. What is wealth?
Yeah, and I'd love to dive into that a bit more. When we talk about the FIRE movement and retiring early, to me, that always seems a very odd goal. I know it suits some people, certainly, but if you retire in your 40s or your 50s, that's a lot of time to be spent watching daytime television, to be playing golf, to be, doing nothing with purpose. So what does that mean for you? Definition of wealth and financial freedom and even retirement.
I love it. You're so right. And I can tell you that the person whose goal it is to watch TV, daytime television, will not make it. If that's your goal, it's not strong enough. There's not enough big enough why. You know, the persistence of life. We always talk about we need persistence to achieve worthy accomplishments, worthy achievements. I'm telling you, you need really big whys to get through and to fuel your persistence. My why was the protection of my family, the providing for my family. I was born with that instinct. I had to do that. That wasn't a choice. I could not do that. If my goal was to sit on a beach, I would have quit 1,000,000 times. Because I thought about my kids, I wanted to put them through college without debt. I would look out a window sometimes when I was working and other people were golfing. And I would say, I'm going to keep this up. I'm going to continue. And what the world saw was a lot of persistence. But what I saw was a big why. I was very clear on not just what you want, but why you want it. The FIRE movement, I kind of like them, to tell you the truth. I like those people. And the reason I like them is because they have absolute clarity. Even though sometimes I disagree with the cause of some of them, like they just want to have pleasure. they're after this. I'm not against pleasure, but it seems to me that sometimes their goals in life, their end goals, might be about as purposeful as watching TV. So yeah, if you're just looking to travel the world, okay, do that for a while. In my opinion, I guess I would say that you really will find out sooner or later what we all know. And what we all know is that this illusion of happiness by pursuing pleasure is really a delusion. You'll find your greatest happiness and satisfaction and purpose. And for some reason, the human being is wired for fulfillment and helping other people. And I don't know why that is, but that's where we find it. And so you'll eventually find your way back there through sheer misery. In my opinion, I've talked to a million people that have said the same thing. But the FIRE movement, they have a clarity. I would say that I was probably a FIRE movement guy if you would define me as a guy that wanted financial independence. But I wanted something different after that, and I was able to do higher purposes. I wanted to get rid of all the small things of life so I could do some important things of life. And so that was a big why for me. I was very clear on why I wanted wealth. And for me, wealth, like I said, was a big number, the 220,000. I had reasons for that, for that specific number. So I knew why I wanted it. That's really important.
What drove that number? Because we often hear about people in the FIRE movement picking a fairly arbitrary figure, but you, as you say, had a specific reason for wanting a very precise number. So what was the motivation behind $220,000 a year? It's
a perfect question, and I tell you, in talking about the FIRE movement, I think that my advice is to them is they shoot a little too low. I think that a lot of times that you'll find young people, myself included when I was young, we don't understand that life is going to have catastrophes coming our way. We don't prepare for the inevitable crisis coming into our life. And so we don't need to meet our expenses in retirement. We need to exceed them, because there are going to be years when that number of 220,000, which I attained at the age of 49, all of a sudden, it's not up there like I thought it was. Sometimes the rentals go haywire and it's down a little lower. Sometimes there are a lot of expenses in life, and my kids go back to college or my wife goes to college. There's a lot of things that come that you don't expect yet that you have to prepare for. Why 220,000 for me? I knew that my family in my area would need about $100,000 to live. So I start there. Let's say I wanted freedom, but I wanted freedom without worry. So I saw my brother retire early, but he had to watch his heating bills. I didn't want that. I wanted freedom without worry. So I knew $100,000, if I could get that coming to me through a business, through whatever, that would free me of worry. So to get that kind of money spendable, of course, we have to earn maybe $150,000 with taxes. So now we're up to $150,000 in passive income. One of my major motivations, though, was I wanted to continue my direction in life even when I retired. I didn't just want to retire and sit on a boat, sit on a beach, sit on a chair. I wanted to feel like I was still alive, and I wanted to grow my business from my vision. Was probably aided by Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's. He had a term called evergreen, and what he was trying to do all the time, his strategy was add one more McDonald's, a cash-flowing McDonald's, to his already big organization of other profitable McDonald's. Evergreen meant cash flow. And so I named my rental real estate Evergreen Houses, not because of nice, cute little bushes around the trees, but because it reminded me of my goal was always cash flow. Keep that foremost in mind, John. Don't forget this. That's what I was trying to put into my head. So I wanted to grow it from it. In my area, a duplex might cost $80,000. Okay, it might cost 100, but the good ones cost 80, the best deals. Let's go back to the math. I'm at $100,000 needed to live. That's 150 with taxes. So I'm up to 150. Add $80,000 to grow my business with a duplex once a year. I'm sitting somewhere around 220. So that was kind of the general idea of it. And I can say this, that when I made that goal, it was absolutely unrealistic. I was broke. And I was influenced by the teachings of Jim Rohn. He always said that it's important to set a large goal, not just for what you get, but who it makes you become. Like it forces our personal growth. I was attracted to that idea. But I was also attracted to the idea of Jack Canfield. You see how you start studying people. Jack Canfield always said it was important to set such a high goal that you can't do it on your own. You're going to need what he would call a higher power. You lean on the power of goals and focused faith. And he would talk about these ideas of the power of faith. And so I was attracted to that as well. A goal so big that it would require some luck. And I can tell you that in my life, I wouldn't be wealthy today without a little bit of luck. That's just the truth of it. But I think you can create your own luck sometimes.
Absolutely. John, tell us a bit about The Wealthy Gardener. I see a copy sitting on your shelf behind you. So this is your new book coming out in February.
So once I got to the end of the journey, I was done at the age of 49. I reached my goals. And so sometimes you hit a point and you say, now what? What's the higher purpose? I say, I don't want to chase a dollar. Okay, so now I have a higher purpose possibility. Well, what's my next direction? That's the stage you get at when you get to retirement and you remove that carrot. Well, my son was about ready to graduate from college. And it was important to me that I would instruct him before he goes out into the world. And so I wrote a book called The Wealthy Gardener, Life Lessons on Prosperity Between Father and Son. The Wealthy Gardener is an old man who's nearing the end of his life. He started with a small garden, and he grew it slowly over many decades by putting the hours of his days to best use. He eventually grew that garden into a large farm, winery, and a vineyard. And he employs a lot of town. But in this story, I try to convey all the lessons that led to my own prosperity. And in my world, it was about behavior. It's about what we do. It's about psychology and what we think. And at least for me, I can tell you that the pursuit of wealth was a spiritual adventure. The garden has always been a metaphor throughout life to speak of a person's time on this earth. And I didn't make up this metaphor, but I did use it for a story. We reap what we sow. We get in life what we earn. And we can shape our environment according to our own will and our own imagination if we're willing to sacrifice. And that was the whole idea behind it. It's about everything I've ever learned. I think what resonates with people, what makes the book a little unique, is that before it became public, before it was on Amazon as a bestseller, before it was known to anybody, it was just me and my son. For 3 years, it was just he and I reviewing life lessons that I've learned that I wanted to pass along to the next generation. It's really important for me to teach him to use the days, not just let them pass by without purpose. And, I wanted him to understand the work of earning, not just earning his living in a 40-hour job, but earning his dreams in his free hours. I needed him to understand perspectives of wealth, like patience. It's something we don't know when we're young. It's going to take some time, and your impatience only drives you crazy. It doesn't speed up the process. And there's going to be setbacks along the way. We all know that as we're older. And some of those setbacks are going to feel like heart-crushing, terrible failures. But don't ever use that word failure. It's not a failure. A failure is when you die. A failure is when you can't get up the next day. A failure is a final. Nothing's final. You can always get up. Those kind of things. But I especially needed him to understand that he has the power to be wealthy. I think that's where a lot of people just see such a large goal, and sometimes it feels out of reach for them. And so I assembled a lot of the most practical, relevant success principles that mattered in my own life. And I call those the 55 powers for wealth. And I wrote about them in the book. It's a book of life lessons between father and son. And it's wrapped around the story of a wealthy gardener, and that's the book.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we put links in the show notes of this episode so our listeners can go off and find the book on Amazon and other platforms, get hold of a copy, read it, let us know what they think. But John, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today. Thank you so much for your time. I wish you all the very best with the book and with your mission, because it's just lovely to hear the story and to hear about what's driving you in life. It's a fantastic story.
I appreciate you being here, and it's an honor. I've enjoyed it myself, so thank you so much for reaching out to me.
A big thank you to John for joining us on Informed Choice Radio today. I really, really enjoyed that conversation. Do check out his book. It's called The Wealthy Gardener. It's a really lovely series of stories and wisdom that he's accumulated during his journey, which is just such an incredible journey. And I really did get a lot of value out of listening to that, or having that conversation with John. So thank you, John, for joining us on the podcast today. Do check out the show notes, which includes the links to the book. You can find that at icradio.co.uk. And until next time, I'm Martin Bamford, and this is Informed Choice Radio. And remember, when it comes to your money, the more you know, the faster it can grow.